Hi, everyone. Welcome officially for joining us today. Thank you for joining us on this virtual reading event. My name is Hala Alawi, and on behalf of Atmosphere Press, I am so pleased to welcome you to today's reading. We're going to be hearing from Chantal Dalton, author of Beyond All Knowing, released on July 8th. We'll also be hearing from George H. Northrup, author of Everyone's Going, Poems on Grief and Mortality, also released on July 8th, and Robert Savino Oventile, author of The Canyon, Poems and Photos, released on September 9th. All three poets' books can be purchased from online retailers and from select bookstores. And of course, you can find the books on Atmosphere Press's website. That's at atmospherepress.com/book. I'm actually also going to put the links directly to each book in the chat so you can easily check those out. At the end of the readings, we're going to have time for your questions. So during the readings, if you have a question for one or more of our poets, go ahead and type those in the chat and I will make sure they get asked. Please do stay muted for the duration of the event, but feel free to use the chat for any praise and comments in addition to your question. One last note is that we at Atmosphere Press appreciate your support today and always. If you have a manuscript of your own, we would love to read it, so submit your work today to books@atmospherepress.com. Again, thank you so much for tuning in to support Chantal, George, and Robert today. We're going to start off with our first reader, who is Chantal Dalton. Chantal is a recovering poet. She has returned to writing poetry after a long hiatus and is delighted to rediscover her poetic voice. She's a graduate of Bates College and has a master's degree in American literature from Northwestern University. In addition, she has a master's of science degree in national security strategy from the National Defense University, National War College, Fort McNair, in Washington, D.C. She taught English at Rutgers, the State University of New Jersey, served at both the Queens College, New Brunswick, and Livingston College campuses, and her primary career was as a Foreign Service officer, first for the United States Information Agency and later with the Department of State after the agency merger. Chantal lives in Washington, D.C. with her husband and three crazy rescue cats whom they adore. This is her first published poetry collection, Beyond All Knowing. This book explores what it's like to be surprised by love. A chance encounter provides a new opportunity for her to really see and be seen, to be heard and understood. These poems are about everyday observations that help teach what it is to experience loss and grief, endure longing and uncertainty, face the challenge of self-discovery and acceptance, and enjoy the deep satisfaction of finding home and genuine connection. Let's now welcome Chantal.
Thank you, Hala. Living joy. Make that loving joy. I am meeting love for the first time. I've tried desire, lust, convenience, compromise, but love is none of these. I settled. I lost some moment in the past that would have made me whole. Instead, I am here, amazed, joyful, calm, happy and sad, confident and tentative, realistic, delusional, navigating feelings that had no context before. Love respects no one. Our timelines don't match, but our spirits do. Spirit carries me across time and space to where all that matters is love. Desire does not win. Impatience is hobbled. Joy draws you into my thoughts, and doubt has no name. This love has no beginning and no end, no hesitation, no regret. This love has a life of its own that neither of us can fathom or escape. Under a scorching sun, we drink cool, cool wine. Nothing for it. There is nothing to be done for it. My love is indelible. It does not wash off. It has determination. It is fearless. This love has its own timetable. Love, like most good things, is happiness and wholeness. Love is joy that rises with the sun, sustains itself through struggles and storms, overcomes fear and silence and distance, a confident love that knows its name and calls you by name. This love has a destination and a home. Nothing is lost when love prevails. Even if one treasured thing goes away, you are left with everything else because love prevailed. I alone am left to tell the tale. Love matters. The wisdom in my secret heart tells me so. A heart no longer secret, a heart that has a home. At the farm, too, I walk with a little assistance. Often, someone kindly offers their arm. If not, my cane, which I consider a prop, is what I lean on. The farm is my favorite hideout when things are lonely, sad, or dull. The walking path was always a challenge, but I persevered since I wanted to pick some herbs and pat the kale. I returned later that week, and that path had been improved. I could walk easily with just a wobble or two. When I want to get somewhere worthwhile, I try to find level ground, a way to steady myself, keep my balance, and persist. Seeing you is always worthwhile since you are my level ground and don't mind my wobble or two. The woodpile. What waits at the bottom of the woodpile? More wood. Below me, earth underneath the wood. Insects scurrying around, frantic, exposed. The sweat it took to chop that wood into logs for the fire. The strength it took to stick to the task. Find leaves blackened by the pressure of logs choking out the sun. Slick and soggy from rainwater seeping underneath that pile of wood that never seems to change. I know we've burned many, many logs, all chopped by you by hand, wearing safety goggles, work gloves, and a wool cap, a ragged scarf at your neck. You swing the axe as an extension of your arm. Here at the farm, I am sitting at a backyard table, notebook open, pen poised to write. Squinting at the sun, I covertly watch you work, wondering what it's like to swing an axe, to split a log, to toss it on the pile and swing the axe again. With focus and facility, you create the chunks of murdered trees we burn for warmth when the sallow sun makes us shiver. As the words I scratch across the page stretch my thoughts in ink, the woodpile turns your sweat into flame. Big Easy. I close my eyes and see your face. I hear you call my name. By some digital process I do not understand, you appear on my phone. I am on the Natchez. You are home in the backyard chopping wood. I was thrilled to see you, to know that I was somewhere and you were somewhere else at the same time talking to me. A disembodied voice embodied. To see you and hear your voice without a Zoom connection, just you and me talking, you alone, and everyone else around me unaware that I held your face in my hand, smiling up at me from my phone. You said you saw joy in my face, not realizing that it was not just the ride on a steamboat in the harbor that made me smile, but sharing this moment with you, there on the farm, and me here in the city you love. New Orleans, Big Easy, bringing us together, defying distance. My here is there with you. Your there is here with me. Time collapses as together we hear the steamboat whistle and the jazz band tuning up in the background for the second set. I reach out to you, not knowing how to make the connection work. You make it work. That is the joy you see. My face seeing your face before me on my phone. Joy overjoyed. Go on. Stay here with us. We hold you in our hearts. more than a shadow on the doorstep slipping away while you could only watch. Come back to forgive yourself. Come back to who you've always been. Love made flesh, the overcomer, a man of courageous kindness who soaks up loss and sheds fear, who faces a final silence unable to let go. The fissures love has not yet healed will heal. Love will prevail. We must go on to live as we lived before, unapologetic for being here, encouraged by every living thing that feels this life as legacy. You have a fear that lurks in darkness, threatening to swallow the future. Then is no longer here. Now aches to recover. Tomorrow has its own defining moment. You can exhale now. You can cry along with us. Take another deep breath and let it go. Again and again and again and go on. Except for you. I am not in love with you. There'll be no conclusion to the illusion that there is a future in this non union. Your world is yours, and my world is mine. I leave behind almost all that is you, and more firmly embrace all that is me. My pen remembers a closed door, a closed heart, an end to revelry. Except for you, there'd be no poetry, no sky, no sea. I introduced myself to me again. I have a destination and a home within. You opened the door and said, begin. Proof. Silence can be weightless. Silence can carry us across time until it feels safe to speak again. Words forced into silence press us down until breath is strangled, speechless. What we don't say weighs on us the most. What does it take to lift that weight? Together we bear the silence better than alone. Your hand in mine is weightless. A deep breath steadies my heart. There is no let be. I am already. I crack the silence and you break it. I insist that you were the sweetest man I know. You kiss the hand that holds yours and prove it. Snowbird. Some of us have all the life we were meant to have. The rest of us, not so much. Waiting for it all to become clear, I'm watching football, snacking, feeding the cats, folding clothes, cooking as little as possible, and avoiding takeout, too oily. The chill in the air reminds me that summer has flown. I pull out wool scarves and hats, gloves, and the unworn snow boots from last year. You keep wishing for snow. You fly somewhere to find some. I stay warm. Back with snow glow and a lighter spirit, you are more yourself, and I remain me, the one who notices things, watches the sky, hears birds retreating at dusk. I swish through dried leaves in the yard. Glad to see you again. I heat up lentil soup and sit down, ready to hear your stories. You already know mine. Take leave. I pull Time's stretch band off and put it on the bedside table. With time suspended, I step out into the night and disappear. There is no day star in the darkness. Lost under night stars, I close my eyes. With my heart's eye, I see your face. Fearless, I embrace the city's silence. The silence unfolds a space for me to sing. Is it the silence or the song that keeps me awake? The song overcomes the silence with the stroke of a pen. Head music, heart music, I make up the lyrics as I go along. I trace a path that I have walked before. When we give ourselves away, the joy is almost too much to bear. My destination bends toward home. Safe at home, we can sit down together and take leave of each other. Wait for the day star to appear. It is not far. It won't be long. No need to wonder what the end will be. That's my set.
Thank you so much, Chantal. And thank you for that reading. I feel like so much of that language, so crisp and beautiful. It really felt very immersive. So thank you for that. Our next reader for today is George H. Northrup. George is a poet and psychologist in New Hyde Park, New York. Long active in the poetry communities of Queens, Nassau, and Suffolk counties on Long Island, his award-winning poems and featured readings have contributed to the sparkle of the local literary scene. President of the Fresh Meadows Poets for 18 years, he also served 8 years on the board of the Nassau County Poet Laureate Society. Everyone's Going is his fifth poetry collection. As a clinical psychologist, George infuses his poetry with a compassionate, seasoned understanding of human nature, encompassing all its sorrows and resilience. His professionalism has earned him the attention and respect of his colleagues, who elected him president of the New York State Psychological Association in 2009, as well as representative to the council that governs the American Psychological Association in 2012 to 2014. Nature, travel, and Buddhist practice are some of his other cherished preoccupations. Everyone's Going, the collection I mentioned, is a remarkable collection that offers fresh, insightful perspectives on universal themes of grief and mortality. These poems are sure to resonate with readers who have experienced loss and with anyone seeking a deeper understanding of the human condition. George, take it away.
Thank you, Hala. I'll be reading a selection of poems that range in their themes from personal losses to broader meditations on the inevitable mortality that we all face. Since few of you have copies to follow along, I have tried to choose poems that are relatively short and accessible in a single hearing. The first one is called Chair by the Window. My father sleeps serenely, soundly through the night, even much of the day. His appetite is good, abiding mood content. Legs no longer carry him. Family, events of the day, global calamities flicker on the screen of awareness. His chief preoccupation remains, as always, deep decor on the inscape of his skull. Having accepted the invitation, he awaits the date. This next poem is called The Lid. The setting, which is not immediately obvious, is a funeral parlor. These are my people, gathered in whispers, a quiet cohort bending the arc of each other's lives to this reluctant point, drawn together in that shuddering unease between the futile agonies of looking back and looking forward. They are here today, bent in capitulation, because the beckoning lid remains open in this mock Victorian parlor of velvet drapes, gold-painted trim, and cut-glass chandeliers. The lights above are dimmed, except for one that spots the honored guest. Tomorrow we will close the lid, declare an end, but not achieve it, not yet. Till then, we carry the gaze of each other's eyes, understanding too well our sorry purpose here. And there are no words to calm this coiled grief, nothing adequate to say, hence bromide and ritual, hence the nervous laugh, change of subject, anything to escape the quiet tension at this sad altar of satin and mahogany, where the fragrance of flowers brings no delight, their pastels no glimpse into beauty. The next poem is called Extended Memory. I remember everything about this little gardenia bush, how the buds of your eyes blossomed when I surprised you with it the wilted look on your face when you gave it back a few months later, worried you would kill the helpless plant, trusting me to keep it alive. That was 20 years ago. I remember the time I asked my wife to water it while I attended a conference in Rome. She did what you might have, inclined to be too nurturing, and half was drowned. Now the surviving half grows to one side like a trained bonsai, wintering in the greenhouse, summering on the front steps, where it flowers like that first time in your arms. I considered repotting my gardenia, tilted upright to look less like an amputee, but I have come to prefer this injured way, holding all that was perishable between us. A wife's cancer prayer. Let the radiation begin. Let someone hear me when I fall. Let my sister arrive, her tears their own beseeching. Let me hold the spoon without tremor. Let my bowels remember the patient work of peristalsis. Let my decline lift all compassion. Let there be oxygen tanks. Let it be time for the next dilaudid. Let me inhabit a world more spacious than this bed, cradle of my anguish. Let me leave the others softly as I sleep. This poem is called Awaiting Flowers. With age, she wanted waist-high garden beds, had a trio of them built with cinder block and brick, secure enough to last for centuries. She would never rush the season, sometimes planting tomatoes in July, and far too tolerant of weeds, I thought, as I banished uninvited guests. Now she is planted in the ground herself, never again to climb like a vine above her roots. Memory preserves her here, in the soil where her fingers took the harvest. 3 sarcophagi have waited in full sun, in the temperance of spring, for signs of life. This year I test the sprinklers, add fresh compost, nurture flowers instead of vegetables, in a half-hearted plan for growing new meanings to convalesce the old. A soft retirement. I remember Dolores, childless aunt inviting nieces and nephews to the farm all those years ago. A world of candled eggs, red cabbages, potatoes, and a farmer's deep concern for all things in the ground. After we grew up and settled far away, you and Eddie sold the farm, exchanged hard work for soft retirement. The door to Florida was open, and you went. Well water with a sulphurous smell, the yellow barn, and popcorn strung around the tree passed on decades ago, except in living memory, long before your swift surrender to intensive care, antique organs eager for a ghoulish trophy. Even in Florida, summer slips away. I feel as if I dig your grave today, shoveling this heavy snow in New York while you turn cold in Naples, approaching your beloved soil. Remembering the northern winter, wise in the ways that seasons should be spent, you saw the door was open and you went. This poem is called Decision. Only 17, He had endured enough, stranded in hollow pain, staring sleepless at the pitch of night, each succeeding day unraveling his mended hopes. He stopped home after school to empty his wallet except for the card that would identify him. Then onto the platform, the stage almost, where any minute an express train would thunder across his future. It would leave him in its wake, mangled corpse of sorry flesh, simultaneously killing off any second thoughts, any kisses or guitars, any teenagers of his own. He had never heard that shocking claim, we had to destroy the village in order to save it, but had lived long enough to understand the savage urge to seek relief through violence, to hope for salvage in ruin. He would launch himself like a rocket into the infinite mercy of death. As the train approached, he leaned toward the tracks and stared at the iron face of his executioner, last legs tense, amazed by the shakes that overtook him, an inner opposing force roaring its own insistent message. Fear, then terror, tightened in his chest. For weeks, everything had plunged in value except this one ambition. Now it too fizzled into failure, joining the queasy rumble of quandary and regret. "Mom, I need help," he texted. An ambulance hurried him to the Department of Emergencies for a surreal weekend, locked in a ward of unbelonging. He accepted the lithium that was offered, and for a while no one could say what exactly had changed everything. A drug known for occasional miracles, or the unblinking headlights of a ruthless commuter train. Bedside manners. From the oncologist's shocked expression, she knew she had asked the right question, the one he dared not answer. As he reached for words to steady the moment, promising research underway, the advantages of early detection, she knew he was leading her into the zone of his own safety, inviting her not to contemplate the prowling future. She repeated the question, and he fell back on other bright evasions. We will do our very best. No one can predict with certainty. But she fixed him in her narrowed eyes until he felt like a specimen under her microscope, exposed by her scrutiny, defenseless in this close examination. So when she asked him a third time, his tongue forgot all science and the healer's optimistic watchwords. His head began to shake, eyes looked away, trembling lips wordlessly confessed the answer. A white coat, stammering syllables, he offered her the shame of having nothing to offer except himself as the vessel for their collapsing hopes. And she thanked him for that. The last poem is called Heroes of the Holocene. For those of you who may not be gardeners, salvia, which is mentioned frequently in the poem, is a flowering plant in the mint family. Archaeologists call them Natufians, the first people known to practice burial rites. They lined their graves with salvia. 14,000 years ago, near present-day Mount Carmel, long before Hades and Persephone, before Anubis and Osiris, Before Yahweh and Lucifer, they lined their graves with salvia, imagining an afterbreath of soul. Rare is the person who has heard of Natufians, civilization's pioneers, slicing stalks of rye at Tel Abu Harera with the earliest sickle blades. They settled long enough to establish agriculture in the Middle East, invented bread and beer. They dug to plant their crops and dug fresh graves they lined with salvia. Natufians carved jewelry from bones, chiseled limestone idols in lusty embrace. The skeletal remains reveal that more than half their offspring perished during childhood. Founders of Jericho, Natufians fished in the Jordan River, hunted gazelles, domesticated canines. These heroes of the Holocene flourished for millennia, far longer than the Pax Romana or the Renaissance. With kisses and tears, they tucked their children into beds of salvia. Thank you.
Thank you, George. That was such a wonderful opportunity for inner reflection, to take a pause and a moment during this, busy life. It just goes by, right? So that was really a beautiful opportunity. Thank you. Our final reader for today is Robert Savino Oventile. Robert teaches English at Pasadena City College and has published interviews, essays, and book reviews in Postmodern Culture, Jacket, and Chicago Quarterly Review, among other journals. He's the author of Impossible Reading, Idolatry and Diversity in Literature, and of Satan's Secret Daughters, The Muse as Demon. Through poems and photos, The Canyon, which is the book we'll be hearing Robert read from today, meditates on Eaton Canyon, a unique ecosystem nestled adjacent to Pasadena and Altadena, California. In January 2025, the Eaton fire devastated the canyon along with parts of Altadena and Pasadena. The canyon reflects on the resilience of this environment, recalling how its wildlife, plants, and terrain rebounded after the 1993 Kinaloa fire. Shaped by fire and now increasingly by human-driven climate change, Eaton Canyon is part of a larger story, one that climate scientists place within the evolving Earth system. We'll hear more now from Robert.
Thank you for that introduction. And the introduction kind of gives a bit of the context of this book, The Canyon. Let me just add a bit more context. Many of you might have seen about half a year ago in the news some news coverage of what's now known as the Eaton fire. Eaton Canyon, it's near Pasadena, California, the place of the Rose Bowl, the Rose Parade. And it's a fire ecology. Many of the plants and animals in Eaton Canyon are adapted to fire. But this last fire, the Eaton fire, was a very strong fire. You know, in 1993, the Kinaloa fire, one fatality, 121 homes lost. The 2025 Eaton fire, 19 fatalities, 5,932 homes lost in Altadena, one of the cities like Pasadena, very close to Eaton Canyon. I began writing these poems about 2 years ago, in 2 or 3 years ago, about a poem a month about the canyon. And then in January, the Eden fire happened and pretty much moonscaped the canyon. The canyon's now closed and will be closed to hikers for probably 2 or 3 years. And so that fire kind of brought my process of writing the book to a close. My process was generally to take a hike in the canyon, notice something, learn a little bit about that aspect of the canyon, and then try to write a little prose poem about it. But after the Eaton fire, that was no longer possible. So I said, okay, great. I guess I've got my poems for this book. And I was lucky enough to contact Susan Hopkins, who's a California certified naturalist, Edgar McGregor, who is a local environmentalist, and Tom Mills, a local nature photographer, to contribute photos to the book of aspects of the canyon. And we're donating all proceeds to the rebuilding of the Eaton Canyon Nature Center, especially the educational exhibits in the newly what will be, at some point, the new Nature Center. Um, and so let me just read a couple of poems out of this book. They're prose poems. They're each in about 5 sections, and each section. I thank George for mentioning the Holocene. That geological epoch that is just coming to a close right about now. And the poems I've tried to write about the canyon are trying to talk about the Pleistocene, the geological epoch before the Holocene, and the transition from the Pleistocene to the Holocene. And now, for example, with this anthropogenic global warming boosted Eaton fire, the transition out of the Holocene, alas, it's kind of a sweet spot for Homo sapiens and a lot of other species, to what geologists and other earth scientists are informally calling the Anthropocene. So each poem, it's in about 5 sections. Each section is a little snapshot of something about the canyon or about the theme the poem is about. And so let me just read a couple of these. The first one is titled Canyon Bridges. Daybreak at the crossing. The icy rivulet flows somewhat broader than a stride. Strange. You pause and then you leap. At the apex of your quick bow over the murmuring water, tingles envelop you from your bare head to your sandaled feet. Over a labyrinth of posts, braces, and crossbeams, trestles in frozen march across the canyon, a flatbed truck rolls slowly, carrying upright, crated and cradled, a circular mirror, diameter 100 inches, 4.5 tons of glass. The procession ripples in the water pooled below. Lighter than air, a promise arcs overhead, transparent to the sun's rays. The empty sky above the high rock walls, the alders swaying in the breeze, the stream gleaming among wavering shadows, all testify. In the end, no one can drive their dreams away. When floodwaters stove the trestle bridge, a Throop graduate recalled envisioning a grace-heavy arch curving above the stream bed, the abutments firm in rock, in earth, with the deck of spandrels set to the harmonies of the graduate's dancing numbers. A plain girder bridge with 2 piers, thick concrete, sinewed with rebar, simple lines. There, under dense gray clouds, my father leans over the guardrail to watch the cutwaters battle the torrent. I listen to boulders thud past and downstream. And maybe one more. This one is titled Bobcat. So Eaton Canyon, it's about 8 square miles in total, goes up into the San Gabriel Mountains. The Eaton Canyon LA County Park is about 190 acres, a more limited region of that larger canyon. And so, this canyon has bobcats, coyotes, bears, black bears, thankfully no longer grizzly bears, not thankful for them, but for the hikers, it's probably a good thing. And so it's rich in life, this canyon. And among the life forms in the canyon are bobcats. So here's a poem titled Bobcat. Bobcat. The years warmed, glaciers retreated, and short-faced bears, saber-toothed cats, and dire wolves grew rare, then disappeared. Their contemporary, the bobcat, came through and persisted, living on into the era of jet planes, tracked homes, and smartphones. A motion-activated camera captures a nighttime scene. Ink black background, low shrubs, grasses, and in the foreground clearing, a small deer carcass, partially eaten, a bobcat standing near, back arched, giving two approaching coyotes a hard stare. Is there relief in finding bobcats are around, as if the horizon expands a bit in circumference and the press of time becomes a little less adamant? Perhaps the reprieve comes just from discerning yet another attunement to the canyon. A colleague's son raised a bobcat from a kitten in his apartment. Don't ask. The bobcat kept trying to scrape the living room shag carpet and was not keen on using a litter box. Evening quiet time for TV watching was sometimes difficult to achieve. In the early morning hush, beneath low clouds shedding mild rain, a glimpse at the edge of vision. A bobcat bounds across the trail and then scampers up the canyon, as soon present as gone, yet the silence after remains distinct from the silence before. So there's a couple of pieces from the canyon. Thank you. Thank you all for taking a listen to them. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Robert, and especially thank you for that context ahead of time. I think that is so important to really ground the listeners in this case, but also the readers in what they're kind of diving into with this book. So I think that was fantastic. Thank you. At this time, we've got time for our audience Q&A. So if you have a question for one or more of our poets, please go ahead and put those in the chat, and I will make sure they get asked. We do have a question for all three poets that has come in already. What part of the writing process surprised you the most? I'm thinking we could go in reading order. So Chantal, do you want to start us off with this one?
Yeah. What surprised me the most was that when I looked back at my early poetry, I saw sort of the same voice. I found some of the same themes, and that was kind of interesting to me. Also, sometimes I'll just get a first line and then I'll say, okay, where is this going? And the poem, it sounds corny, but the poem will sort of reveal itself. And then I discover at the end where I was going. It's very interesting.
Yeah, I'm sure there's kind of a almost like a scary element to that, not knowing where it's going to take you, but ultimately kind of enjoying that process, I'm sure is part of it. What about you, George? What part of the writing process surprised you the most?
But for me, the surprising part is always the inspiration that jumpstarts the poem itself. The rest of it is editing and submitting and proofreading and so on. That part is not so surprising. Uh, there was a there was a famous poet who was once asked, "Where do your poems come from?" And he said, "If I knew that, I would go there and never come back." It's a wonderful, delightful, surprising thing to have suddenly an idea come from seemingly nowhere.
Right. And it's very in line with what Chantal was saying, just kind of seeing where it takes you. I think it's just such a beautiful part of that process. Robert, what about you? Is it kind of a similar thing that surprises you, or what surprises you the most about your writing process?
Well, I agree with George and Chantal that I'm only the honorary writer of these poems, in the sense, they come from somewhere, and if I'm lucky to receive one, I get to put my name to it. And with this set of poems, um, they're all connected to this canyon, Eaton Canyon, and so it's not a vast national park, Eaton Canyon. It's a relatively confined area, but as one of the photographers put in her bio, Susan Hopkins, the slower you go, the more you see. And so, any hike or walk you take in Eaton Canyon, if you're letting yourself be aware of what's around you, you'll notice things you didn't notice before. Um, and so that's how I found my surprises in that would be jumping off points for a given poem in the collection.
Yeah, I love hearing about how this very natural environment. Of course, it's so central, obviously, to the poems here, but how that factors into the process. And actually, we got a question for you, Robert, about that. Do you take photos first or write poems first?
It depends. I'll generally take a photo, or when the canyon was open, I'll generally take a photo and then write a poem. Um, but about half of the poems in the book have connected to them photos by Edgar, Susan, or Tom. And so for those poems, I wrote the poem and then asked one of those three, like Edgar, he's got a photo of a bear in the canyon. I have not had the luck of running into a bear in the canyon. Um, so there's, an example of where I had my poem Bears in the Canyon all written, and then one of my co-creators of the book luckily had a photo of a bear in the canyon.
Yeah, it's fascinating how that kind of interplay happens. We've got another question, again, kind of about process. This is for George. You said in the chat this collection was written over 30 years. When did you know it was time to centralize everything into one collection?
I think about 10 years ago. Um, I had published some smaller collections before, and I had some ideas about how a poetry collection should be organized. I began going through the 1,500 or so poems I've written in my life and trying to pick those that would fit on a given theme, and found 100 pages worth of material that has turned into this book.
Yeah, I think it can surprise us sometimes when you really think about that and think about this theme, and in this case, a specific theme, and how everything comes together for that. I think it can surprise you how much you can really put together in that way.
Yes,
We've got,
I never had the intention until then of writing a poem on grief and mortality. I wrote occasional poems that touched on that theme, and
hmm,
then I realized that they were all talking to each other, belonged together.
wow, yeah, I imagine it's very similar to kind of how some memoirs coalesce, when there's that specific theme, and maybe you don't realize it at first, but along the road, that's when it kind of comes together. This is a question for all three writers. What is next for you? What's your next writing project? Chantal, do you want to start us off again with this one?
I have already started my second writing project and have submitted it to Atmosphere already. It's going to be called Lost in Translation if it gets accepted and gets published. So um, that was sort of moving along the same kinds of lines, but like George, I included some poems that have to do with the passing of a relative and how that came about. What was the process? What happened? So that's already sort of in the works, and we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, an exciting project to be on the lookout for, but I imagine also very intense emotionally. So I think that will be really a vulnerable thing to see, which also I think is what's so great about so many writers' projects that they're putting out there. Robert, what about you? What is next for you as a writer?
Well, Eden Canyon is off limits right now. And so I'm thinking of getting myself down to the Anza Borrego State Park. It's a little south of Pasadena, and kind of hiking around there a bit and seeing what happens, and maybe starting a book out of that process or that experience, those experiences.
Yeah, I think that's very exciting to hear another project born of this engagement with the natural world. I think a lot of people will be excited about that too. And George, what about you? A new project for you on the horizon?
I think once a poet gets started, there's no stopping them. It's such an experience to create something like that that you never want to give it up. So of course I'm on a new project. Uh, that would be, I think, more explicitly autobiographical than this one. Um, and I have a group of people I meet with once a week who help critique the poems and improve them. So little by little, I hope to have that collection appear also maybe in a couple of years.
Great. Definitely something on the horizon from all three of you to be on the lookout for. We've got just one more question. It looks like that's come in. This one is for Chantal. Your collection seems to have a very positive, uplifting message. If your readers are to take away just one feeling or idea from your collection, what do you hope that it is?
Well, for me, it's sort of what I keep saying in the poems. Love persists, no matter what your circumstance. If you have a kind of grounding in how you want to look after yourself and look after others, if you believe in love, then you've got a chance to have the kind of life you hope for, no matter what the circumstances.
Right. It's something very simple, perhaps, in words, but complex in putting into practice. And I think that's what makes it so important and so rewarding when someone does get to do that. So thank you so much for that. And thank you to all three of you for being here with us today. I am biased. I enjoy poetry readings probably the most of all books that I get to hear from. But even considering that bias, I think this was just such a beautiful collection of books to hear from today and poems that you three have selected. So, to Chantal, George, and Robert, thank you so much for being generous with your time, your words, your thoughts in this Q&A. Thank you also to everyone in the audience for joining us to help celebrate these wonderful writers. And of course, don't forget that you can order Beyond All Knowing, Everyone's Going, and The Canyon from the links in the chat. I'll put those three links in there one more time so you can really easily access them without digging through the chat. Please also consider checking out atmospherepress.com where you can browse our new and forthcoming releases, sign up for our email newsletter, or, of course, submit a book manuscript of your own. You can submit your work to books@atmospherepress.com and let us know that you attended today's event. We'll look forward to hearing from you, but until then, that's it for today's reading. So have a great rest of your week, everyone.